The following presentation was recorded at the 2012 SouthEast LinuxFest in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is licensed under a Creative Commons license. For more information about the SouthEast LinuxFest, visit www.southeastlinuxfest.org. The SouthEast LinuxFest would like to thank the following diamond sponsors in 2012 for helping make these videos possible.
Oh, is it normal? Okay, well, okay, good. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. Good, okay. So my name's Ryan, hello. I've never given this talk before. This might take an hour, this might take 10 minutes, so we're gonna see how this goes. This is called How to Quit Your Job. I'm gonna introduce myself very briefly in a moment here, but okay, just a few notes before we get started. If you're gonna tweet or use Identica, please use that hashtag, self2012. If you want to make fun of me personally, it's @Iculus on Twitter. If you have a question, yell it out. I'll repeat it so the microphone can hear it, and I'll answer you. If you have an objection, if you have anything, this talk can go in any direction. So if you don't like where it's going, we'll just change it as we go. Also, PowerPoint makes you dumb, so there's only like 5 slides in this, and the next one's of my baby. So that might be distracting. We won't leave that one up there. Okay. Good. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name's Ryan. I have not had a normal job in over a decade, which is kind of nice. I haven't been unemployed. I've been working regularly. I just haven't actually had a 9-to-5 job, and I don't even know how long. I started out, I went to college in Charlotte. It's nice for SouthEast LinuxFest to be here in Charlotte this year. I went to school here, moved away for a little while. I now live here again. Out of college, I got a job working at a place that did Java applications, and they had a 3-tiered architecture for customer relationship management, and it was the most boring thing I've ever worked on. I recommend not ever getting into that job. If you see that job, walk out of that job. I think they're still in business. They might even be in this room if they're also looking to quit their job. I got a lucky break. There was something called the Atlanta Linux Showcase many years ago, and a company called Loki Software came down there and had this competition where you could sign up and you could go down there and you could work on the source code of this video game called Civilization 2, which was brilliant. I was obsessed with this game. So I got in the car and I drove down there, and you had 48 hours. You didn't get to sleep. You had to work on this thing and build something interesting. They didn't care what. And a bunch of people did a bunch of different interesting things, and some people won, some people lost. They gave rewards for the most interesting things. And my reward was that I actually got a job at Loki Software. So I moved across the country and started working on porting video games to Linux professionally. It was my last full-time job. When that company went out of business, I moved back in with my parents up in Pennsylvania, which was miserable. If you ever have the chance to do this, I'd recommend you not do it. And from there, I was working at a cyber cafe, working the cash register that a friend of mine had a cyber cafe, and I hated it. And I was playing a lot of a game called Serious Sam at the time. Has anyone ever played Serious Sam? It's great. It's like a more modern version of Doom. It's just how much abuse your character can take as you run through these levels. It's very funny and intense. And I love this game, and I played it all the time. And I figured, I've done this before. I've ported games to Linux. I used to get paid to do that. So I searched around the internet, and I found the only email address I could find for the people at Crow Team, which is the company that made Serious Sam. And I sent them an email and said, I laid out this big, complicated argument about why they need to make a Linux port of this game. It would help them if they wanted to get on the PlayStation 2 because it uses the same compiler, and it'll help them find bugs, and it's an emerging market, and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de. And the guy wrote back and said, I'm just an artist. I'm like, okay, well, it's the only email address I could find. But he was nice enough to forward it on to the people who actually make these decisions, and they let me port their game to Linux. And from there, other people started emailing me and say, hey, we saw you did this Linux port. Are you available to do some work for us? And ended up doing games like Medal of Honor and Unreal Tournament from there and stuff like that. And it's kind of spiraled out of control from there. So now I'm a freelance. I don't work for people. People have offered me jobs, and I turn them down because you can't beat some of the perks of working for yourself. And I'm going to get into that briefly here. So I'm going to tell you what I like about being a freelance, and I'm going to tell you what's really bad about being a freelance. And if you're still here after the what's bad about it, then I'll tell you how to do it yourself. I'll give you some basic advice. Okay, so the first thing about being a freelance is you make more money. It's just really that simple. If you have a 9-to-5 job, you probably have a salary. If you're a programmer, you're probably not hourly. Maybe, I don't know. If you're hourly, you should definitely get out of that job. But once you're making your own hours and your own contracts and you're working with a variety of people, you can make much, much more money than you can make hourly, which is great. There's a lot more variety. You don't ever find yourself, for the most part, thinking, God, I've been working on this project for 3 years and I hate it. Usually it's like, I've been working on this project for 2 months and I'm done with it and I'm moving on to something more interesting. So in the worst case, you never have to deal with crap for too long. You never have to deal with this guy. Which is probably the highlight. And also, I don't have a slide for this, which I think you'll appreciate, but you never have to wear pants. Jokes aside, I spend a good portion of my working day in my pajamas because I can. It's one of the benefits is that you don't have to be presentable from day to day. You know, you can be comfortable. You don't have to be disgusting. You know, but your coworkers are like your house pets, and that's it, which is pretty nice. There's a lot less structure, is what I'm getting at here. If you find that you work best overnight, people generally don't care, and every contract is different, but generally as long as you're showing up with deliverable work, they don't care if you do it in the middle of the night, if you're most productive at 8 in the morning, or if you're most productive at 6 in the evening after dinner, you know, and I think most people will find that they vary from time to time. Anyone that's certainly stayed up all night cramming for something in college will know that some days you're just more productive in the middle of the night. Nobody cares if you're there at 9 in the morning punching a time card, which is really nice. And this is nice for me. There's less human contact. I've had thousands of dollars worth of contracts where people have emailed me, I've emailed them back, I've done work, they've mailed me a check, and I've never even spoken to them on the phone. So if you don't really like people very much, like me, then you might find that you really enjoy working as a freelance. Okay, so those are the real benefits. By the way, if anyone's thirsty, I brought my own water, but there's a water bottle back there, Spencer, if you want some of your own. Okay. Why would you not want to do this? There's less money. Okay, I know I just said there's more money. I'm sorry about that. But the thing is, when you're starting out, especially when you're starting out, you're probably making less than if you just walk into a salaried job. You're probably making a lot less. In fact, if you don't have some savings, you might be really eating a lot of ramen noodles to get through the first couple of months of it. It depends on a lot of factors. Everything I'm going to tell you here is very general, and every situation is very unique. But especially at the beginning, there's less money. More importantly, there's no medical benefits. There's no 401k plan. So what you're basically doing is you're trading a safety net from your salaried place with benefits for more freedom, possibly more money. It's a gamble, and if you like it, you like it. If you can't do it, you can't do it. The other thing is this: is that you don't have that jackass boss anymore, but now you have hundreds of these guys that you spend less time dealing with individually, but they can, any given contract, you can have a manager that really rides you, or you can have someone who wants ridiculous things that don't make any sense. And, but the good news is these people go away every couple of months as you finish the project. So, if you get a Lumberg, you can move on from that. Okay. If you're interested in building interesting things and you're not interested in hustling and making money and keeping books, you shouldn't be a freelance. The thing that everyone talks about working for the man, they don't want to work for the man. But the nice thing about working for the man is someone else is worried about running the business, and you're worried about building beautiful things. Running a business cuts into the building beautiful things time. You don't want to, if that's the thing that you are most interested in, you have to be either willing to trade that off or not do it, because you're going to spend an awful lot of time hustling. Blah, blah, blah. Money isn't everything. I wrote that down. I don't know why. But I think a lot of people that come in here, this is what I noticed coming into the door of SouthEast LinuxFest this year. There are 22 sessions on SQL of various types, various databases and stuff. It's 23 if you count Richard Hipp's talk because he wrote SQLite, but he's not specifically talking about it. But I can't help but feel like there's probably some people in this room right now because they're tired of being a Linux guy or being an open source guy and just being like, oh, that means that you are a database administrator, right? No, God, stop asking me that, I will not fix your computer for you. I feel like there's a lot of people that don't want to work for the man because that's what the man is. It's a lot of repetitive, boring, interchangeable work. And I can sympathize with that because I cringe at that myself. And I cringed at that when I used to do this for a living where, I hated getting up every day and figuring out how to talk to the database that manages customer relationships. It was boring and uninteresting and uninspired and restricting, and it was painful for me. I didn't like it. But that being said, I think a lot of people are afraid of working for the man because they don't want a normal job, but they're using the wrong word. They don't want a boring job. So above everything else, if you don't want to be a freelance, you need to quit your boring job. You need to go find an interesting job. It can be a normal job. It can be on salary. It can be 9 to 5. It can require you to wear pants every day. But don't mistake boring and normal. They're two totally different things. Okay, so are you still with me? Okay, good. The rest of this is going to be about what you should be doing and some basic advice about it. So I just want to make sure no one to run screaming from the room like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I should be at the MariaDB session instead. Because, more SQL is always better than less, right? Okay, so here's what you do. First things first, if you want to be a freelance, you find a vertical market. If you want to do database administration, everyone does it. And I think about in the 90s, everyone that was in college that heard there was some money in this .com thing was learning Visual Basic because they didn't really understand what the .com thing was doing. But you could always pick these people out. If you went to college and there was a computer science department and you looked at the people in the computer science classes, most of them were pretty freaking dumb. Am I right? You're laughing because you know. It is very, very easy to stand out from the herd. And there's a million people that took a Visual Basic course, or in more modern times, they took a Java course, and don't even really understand Java, but they got through the course somehow. And they're all fighting for jobs. But, if your resume is a little bit better than that, then you have 100 dumbasses, and one person that's slightly better than a dumbass, you're doing okay. I hope you're slightly better than a dumbass. I hope you're much better than that. But it's trivial to stand out. To think that you have nothing to offer is probably the wrong way to think about it. But what you want to do in ideal terms is find that vertical market. You want to find the thing where there's a lot of money and nobody working on it. And my life had been a little lucky in that I used to do Java. I just made fun of Java, but I used to do Java when nobody did it because it was cool on OS2, believe it or not. So I learned Java very, very, very heavily, and I was writing stuff in it all the time, and I went to go work for a company that was doing Java when nobody was doing that, and you were almost guaranteed an instant hire because they couldn't find warm bodies that knew how to do it. And then after that, I went to go work on porting stuff to Linux, and that's still a fairly vertical market. I mean, probably everyone in Charlotte that knows how to port something from Windows to Linux is sitting in this room right now. Taking that a step further, not only porting stuff to Linux, but porting video games to Linux, which is a different set of skills than just generally porting stuff. If you can find a vertical market where there's very few people doing it, it's much easier to get work, and it's much easier to get work when you're starting out. If you're just trying to go out there and build LAMP machines for people, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, one, that's a miserable life, and two, everybody's doing that. So at a minimum, if you can find work, you're going to have to charge too little for that work. You don't want to do that. You want to think about what you're good at, and you want to go and sell yourself as doing that and say it's something that nobody else is doing. I can't tell you what that is. For me, it was video games and it was Linux. But for you, it could be any number of things. And look around your desktop at the things that piss you off and try and make them better and say, well, if I'm the only one thinking about this, how can I make money off of it, for example? Now, I'm talking about doing service stuff here. If someone says, I have a project, I need you to write it, I pay you, and then we go our separate ways. It's not unheard of that you could also build a piece of software and then sell services for it. For example, before they got bought by Sun Microsystems, that was MySQL's tactic. They would sell services to MySQL. Certainly other companies have done that too. Certainly there are distributions of Linux that have made millions of dollars, like say Red Hat doing that. But that's very, very hard to start out because you have a long time where you're making no money while you build something interesting, and then you hope it's interesting for other people. But it's an option, you can do it. It's just not what I'm talking about today. When you're going when you find these vertical markets, the way you should be selling yourself is not what you know, it's what you can figure out very, very quickly. You always want to be presenting yourself as someone who can take something they've never seen before, stare at it for a moment, and then solve it. Chances are, if you've ever had a package crash on Gentoo, you probably are good at this, because you've probably had to solve a lot of things you've never seen before as you go along. As an example, come to think of it, if you've ever tried to get a video card driver working on Linux, you've probably had this problem. If you've ever configured a kernel, do people still do that? All right, good. And that's why you should be working for yourself, the people that said yes. Because most people don't, especially now that Linux is getting a little more user-friendly. Like, if you're using Ubuntu, you probably didn't build your own kernel. If you're using Slackware, you definitely did. Let me hear it for the Slackware people. That's what I love about Stealth. The Slackware people come out in force. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, okay, moving on. So. I got a one up for Slackware. I'm feeling good. Okay, so now you have something you want to sell. You have a product. Its name is you. You have a product you want to sell. You want to milk your contacts if you're just starting out. Everyone has contacts, and they don't necessarily know they do. How many of you are still in college? Undergrad? Graduate school? All right, that one person. Good for you. If you're in college, you have way more contacts than you think you do. and I'm not even talking like the Career Center, but certainly that's also an option too. But in terms of other hackers, people you've met on the internet, people at the school who can say, oh, I have somebody that will pay somebody to do something or other, and start building a resume from there. From there, you also want to do some open source. Actually, you want to do a lot of open source. One of the things I love best about my job is I never have to sign something saying, I wrote this thing in my spare time, can the company please let me release it as open source? I hate that policy. Companies that do that suck. They should just let you release stuff if it's not causing problems. Or donate it to the Apache Foundation or something like that. But the beautiful thing about working for yourself is if you have an itch you want to scratch, you write a stupid little Perl script that does something great, or you build this big complex framework that does something powerful, you just put it on GitHub. You don't have to worry about it. Your boss never tells you that you can't put it on GitHub. You know, you never have to go through legal to have them sign anything. You just do it. But the beautiful thing about that is that what you're doing when you put stuff on GitHub or Bitbucket or SourceForge or Google Code or whatever, what you're doing there is not really contributing to open source, although you're certainly doing that. What you're actually doing there is building a resume. How many of you are here actually are in charge of hiring people? Anyone? Okay, 1 or 2 people. If you see someone brings in a resume with a GitHub account on it, are you more likely to hire them?
If it has content.
If it has content. Okay, so not if they have a SourceForge link on there. Okay, I got you. Yes, that's an excellent point. But what I'm saying is you should be building stuff in your spare time or professionally if you're doing this as a freelance. Put it on GitHub and say, this is my resume. This is my content. This is 20 projects I've worked on, so you know that I deliver good code. If you don't want to build your own stuff from scratch because maybe you just don't have anything that's really burning that you want to build from scratch and take total ownership of, there's a million projects that you use every day on a Linux system or a Mac or even Windows for that matter that are open source, and you should get involved in those. You should submit patches. You say, here's something I made better. Here's something I fixed. Here's something I optimized. And your resume should start looking more like, here's a project I committed patches to, here's the patch, here's the mailing list thread where we discussed it and debated it and negotiated until the patch was in the form that it should be to be submitted. Because what you're showing there is not only I can write code, but I can cooperate with others, which is very, very important. Because the scary thing about freelancers for people that are hiring them is sometimes they're just not very good at communicating, even if they're really great workers. Anyone that's ever managed a Google Summer of Code project knows this. That sometimes you have people that you're literally going to hand thousands of dollars and they just stop replying to email. So, you want people to understand that you are responsive and responsible and flexible too. When people say, well, your coding standards need to be different, you can show that you are willing to cooperate and make things work better instead of just being like, my code is perfect. You guys are wrong. Okay, so good. Do open source, milk your contacts, build a resume. You should be constantly updating your resume. Even if you're not looking for full-time work, you should always have that resume constantly updated. Every time you do a project for someone, goes on the resume. Resume should have a nice, easy link that you can pass around, put on a business card, put on an email where, my website /resume or something like that. So people can find the latest version very quickly as it expands with new projects on it. That being said, you should also always be interviewing. Even if you have no intention of taking a full-time job, you should waste the time of full-time employers. Sorry about that, people that hire that one dude over there. People skills are very, very important when you're a freelance hacker. You should always, always be interviewing because it shows you how to sell yourself. And if you have a bad interview, go home that night and think about what went wrong. Did you not know the answer to something? Did you not know the answer to something and didn't cover it well? Did you fart during the interview? Things like that. Did you forget to wear pants? Take notes on these things. What I'm discovering during this talk is the word pants is very funny. But you should always be interviewing, even if you plan to never have a full-time job again, because it keeps your people skills polished. It keeps you understanding the right way to sell yourself. Because remember, as a freelancer, part-time, you are a product. You're always trying to sell yourself to the next employer. You should always try to make a name for yourself. I put on my notes here, I put in quotes blog, if people still use that term. But tweet a lot with interesting things. Don't ever put a picture of yourself throwing up on Facebook, because people are going to look you up. If your friends are doing it, get them to take them down. And get new friends, because those guys are dicks. But People will Google you before they hire you, and they're going to do that whether you want full-time work or freelance work, but you want to make sure that your online persona is the best representation of you that you can have. If they find your Twitter stream, it should be full of interesting technical jargon, jargon's the wrong word, interesting technical thoughts. If you want to use jargon, this guy likes it, but you don't want people to see your persona of you as you were in undergrad or high school. You want to look like a professional. If that means hiding your real actual Twitter account or a fake handle that doesn't have your real name on it, give it to your friends. That's fine. Party all you want. But you really should try to build a persona on the internet that says, "I'm smart. I get things done." Other than that, the basic gist is that you hustle, you do the project, and you ship. Shipping is the important part of this equation. If you can't ship product, you can't be a freelance. If you can't get a project done, because there's lots of people that can't, there's lots and lots of smart people that get obsessed over the technical details or building the best framework and abstraction, and they never actually get the project running. Those people are not good freelancers. They're not good employees either, for what it's worth. But shipping is God. The only thing that matters is whether you ship the project and you ship it on time. If you can't do that, if you can't build a history of doing that, you shouldn't be a freelance because word will get around that you shouldn't be worked with. But other than that, that's basically it. Keep hustling, keep working, always ship. It's that simple. Okay, good. That's the end of the talk that has structure, if that sounded like it had structure at all. The rest of this is just random advice. I'm going to talk about this in depth, and we can see if any of it's useful. If anyone has any questions, yell at me, and we'll do a formal Q&A at the end of this. First off, always be learning. It's the sign of an amateur programmer if they ask people, or they can tell people off the top of their head, how many programming languages do you know? It's the wrong question to ask. It demonstrates immediately, it's the wrong answer to give too. It demonstrates immediately that you don't really know that much. People say, well, how many programming languages do you know? I know C, I know Perl, and Java. Okay, you're fired, or you're not hired in the first place. The enlightened programmer knows immediately that it doesn't matter how many programming languages you know because they're all basically the same when it comes down to it. What you're learning, once you know how to program generally, all you have to do is pick up the book, Learning Perl in 24 Hours, find out what the syntax is like, find out what the quirks are of the language that make it unique, and 24 hours later, you're a Perl programmer. And I wish you luck with that, but you're a Python programmer or, whatever like that. Pick your favorite language. And it's amazing that C and C++ has lasted as long as it has, and Java has lasted as long as it has and stuff, but these languages will all go away. Java will not be the primary thing forever, even though Google uses it almost exclusively, which is horrifying. And Perl and Python and whatever the next big thing is. Ruby got popular for a little while there. They will come and they will go. You don't really want to get stuck and specialized on one language. You always want to be learning. If you don't know anything about how TCP packets go over the internet, you should probably Google it tonight. It doesn't matter if you're going to actually work at the TCP level. You might only be working at the Apache level, where Apache is handling all that stuff and you just care about a stream of bytes that you're sending. But you should still understand how it works. If you don't know assembly language, take a few years and learn it. You will never use assembly language in modern life, theoretically, unless you are really lucky or really unlucky, depending on how you look at it. But you should understand how the machine works at a lower level, and you should understand how, USB sends packets over the bus and stuff like that. And I don't know, I've never had to know how USB sends over the bus, but the more you know, the more you find that you can apply designs that worked well in one way to designs that work well in your own software. And just being a know-it-all is incredibly valuable. Even if you don't need to know specifically how some technology works, you should always be intellectually curious. People notice that too. People can tell who's intellectually curious and who's excited about technology, even if it's not technology they need for the job tomorrow. And you never know when you're going to need it. I wrote something in a language called Lua, which I love. It's a great language. I wrote a piece of software in that as opposed to just a couple of small little scripts, which is what Lua usually ends up getting used for. And I got a call from a recruiter out of nowhere saying, hey, we noticed you did some Lua stuff, and nobody writes Lua software of any size. So, I just one day picked up a book on Lua. I said, this is pretty freaking cool. And Lua is not my full-time job. I don't really spend a lot of time writing Lua code, but that opportunity was closed to me until one day I just got intellectually curious about it. So you should always be learning. Always find something interesting to do in your field that you wouldn't ever think of being curious about otherwise. Okay, keep good records. This is very, very important. If there's ever a discrepancy, if there's ever a disagreement as a contractor, as a freelance, the burden of proof will be on you. If people say that you said you would have this done on the 5th and you thought it was supposed to be done on the 15th, they're going to make sure you're going to be the one that forwards the email that says, we want this on the 15th. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you can't prove it, you're wrong. So always keep good records. Don't throw away email if you don't have to. Always keep scans of contracts. Always keep scans of contracts. Always keep every document you can. Keep backup system too if you don't have one. There's always somebody that doesn't have backups, and you're either going to lose photos of your kid or you're going to lose scans of documents you need for your business. Always keep good backups. Relationships are expensive. Who in here is married? Oh wow, a lot of you, great. You have an uphill struggle as a freelancer because wives, husbands, children, relationships, dating, these things are very expensive, and especially when you're starting out and you don't have a lot of income, it can be an enormous drain on your time and your money. I'm not saying you shouldn't have relationships. Just be aware that it's a bit more uphill when you have to say, well, I would like to do this, but I have a kid now, or I'd like to do this, but I'm getting married in 6 months. These things can kill a freelance dead. So you just want to be careful to know that what you're getting into and understand that you have to budget carefully and more carefully if you have other people relying on you. That being said, always ask for more than the job is worth. This is the best advice I can ever give someone starting out doing anything as a freelance developer. Everyone screws this up, and some people screw it up for many years before they get it right. When you're first starting out, you don't think you're worth anything, which is a bad way to think about it because it affects everything you do in your day. It affects the way you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning. But you always, always, always want to think, okay, this person wants me to build an entire web server from scratch. And I don't mean like put together an Apache box. I mean like write an HTTP server. And they want me to make sure it can handle dynamic languages and it does firewalling. And I think I can do that in a week for like, $20. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. But everyone does that because they think, one, I'm not worth very much, which is a fatal way to think because you're probably worth way more than you think you are. And two, they think that people won't pay what they ask for. And everyone that's a freelance or has ever been a freelance falls into this specific category where they think, I think this job is worth $5,000. So I'm going to ask for $2,000 because if I ask for $3,000, they'll probably just not return my email, which is the wrong way to think about it. I've never in my life had a negotiation with a company that wanted to contract me where I asked for money and they said, it's too much and we're leaving. They never do that. I've had people say that's too much and then we negotiate down. There's always a negotiation involved. That's good, that's fun, that's part of the game. But don't think that there's ever going to be a chance where you say, I want $1 million, and they go, we're just leaving. Well, okay, maybe for $1 million. But there will always be a chance to go up and go down. And don't undersell yourself because it will never go up. If you ask for $3,000 and you think it's worth $5,000, you can't come back later and say, wait, $4,000. I meant $4,000. You always want to think what you would do the thing for, double that, and see if they'll give you the money. And they might laugh and be like, oh, no, it's too much. Okay, then you start working down slowly from there until you find some way that you both agree the price is good. You need to have a minimum price you'll do a job for. And this price will change. It changes on what you think you're worth hourly if you were to think of it that way. But it also, in terms of, I've done jobs for $100 that were probably worth $10,000 because the thing was so interesting. And it's like, I just want to do this job because it's cool. You're allowed to do that if you want to and you can afford it. I couldn't always afford it. I still can't always afford it. Days go by where I can't. But you should have a minimum price in mind, such as, I'm just going to use the number 10,000 here. Okay, I can do this job, but not for less than 10,000. So I'm going to ask for 20,000. And they come in and say, no, we're thinking more like 9,000. You walk, you're done. Sorry, if you can't do it for 10. Shitty work is not better than no work. If you can't get the price you want for it, then you're just going to be doing this job going, I'm miserable doing it. I don't know why I signed up for it. I'm committed to something that I just want to walk away from. So if you can't get the money you want, don't take the job right from the start. So always overestimate the schedule. I mentioned this briefly a second ago. Everyone screws this up when they start out. Everyone thinks they're the ultra hacker. And some of you are the ultra hackers, but even ultra hackers have to sleep sometimes. And someone says, well, we want you to build that web server with the PHP integration and blah, 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 blah. And you go, I can do that in a week. No, you can't. You cannot do it in a week. And if you can do it in a week, you can't do it well in a week. You do not want to be taking jobs where you crack open a 24 case of Coca-Cola, spend all night on it, crash for 3 hours, and then start over. It is not a healthy way to live in general. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your mental state. And more importantly, sooner or later, you're going to fail if you do that. You always want to overestimate the schedule by a large margin. If you think you can do it in a week, you're probably wrong. If you think you can realistically do it in a month, tell them 2 months. If they say they need a month and a half, okay, you can work from there. It's the same principle as negotiating for money. But you never, ever want to say you can do it faster than you think you can do it. It doesn't matter how optimistic you are. It doesn't matter how great you think you are. You don't want to miss deadlines ever. And everyone, I guarantee you, will screw this up at some point in their life. Even if you work for a full-time place, this dude will come to you and be like, can you do this? You're like, yeah, I can do that in a week. And then like 3 weeks later, you're like, I'm not even close to done yet. And then you have to deal with that guy. But that guy could be on the other end of an email too. You always want to take the schedule and double what you think it will take. In the worst case scenario, it takes as long as you said it would and everyone's happy. In the best case scenario, it takes half that time and you deliver in half the time. And they're like, this guy's great, we're definitely going to work with him again. He said it would take 2 months, it took 2 weeks. We love him. Always overestimate the schedule. I'm not saying you should lie to people, but you don't want your youth and enthusiasm to get in the way of your success. I already said shitty work is not better than no work. You should fire your customers if they suck. That sounds like a strange thing to say, but everyone that's ever done freelance work or had a full-time job where you work with external companies, you build things for other companies, there's always just that toxic, poisonous relationship. There's some company that doesn't respond well, keeps asking for more stuff, keeps complaining that you're charging too much, whether you're charging too much or not. The people that you bend over backwards for and they just keep making your life miserable over and over and over again, fire them. You're done. Break the contract. Try to always make sure your contract has something that says you can walk away with 30 days notice or something like that, whatever. But you don't want to keep working for someone that's making your life miserable because you get up in the morning and you go, I don't want to do this anymore. This is just not fun for me. So fire those people immediately. Along those lines, there's people that won't pay you. This is always a concern with freelancers. Never ever give a company the idea that you're running out of money. And although as a freelance, there may be many times where you're running out of money, but people will not pay you because you give them a sob story. What you want to give them is an aggressive story. In fact, if you want to Google for this, you'll have to forgive me for cursing here. There's a great video on the internet of a talk someone gave called "Fuck You, Pay Me." It's great, and it's also full of curses, as you might guess from the title, but it's required viewing if you're a freelance developer because you are going to run into people that don't pay you quickly, they give you a sob story, they try to play on your goodwill. You want to watch out for these people, and you want to be aggressive about getting paid by them. And you want to make it look like you're going to be a problem for them if they don't pay you. That being said, you should always hire a lawyer. You should have one nearby. I'm not, you shouldn't have one full-time or anything like that, but Will Shipley gave a talk to a bunch of college students at WWDC a few years ago, and so I'm stealing this information from him, and I think it's really good advice. You should have a lawyer that you're willing to pay $100 an hour and hope that you never need him. But sooner or later, you will get sued. Everyone gets sued. It's just part of doing business sometimes. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean you're going to lose. It doesn't mean that your life's even going to be miserable. But you need to be able to call a lawyer and say, I got $100 here. Can I talk to you for an hour and see what's going on? That's important. Also, you want that lawyer to be able to send letters to people that don't pay you and say, you owe my client money. This is a letter from a lawyer. Let's just keep it the letter from a lawyer instead of in a courtroom. And then you usually get a check very quickly. So, and the thing is, nobody likes lawsuits, and everyone thinks of that Seinfeld episode with the hot coffee, and it doesn't have to be that way. Lawyers don't have to be a weapon that you wield, and they're not even someone that you have to talk to very often, because frankly, I go out of my way to not associate with lawyers. But you should expect to be able to use them at least as a form of defense when you need to, and not be embarrassed about that, and not feel overwhelmed by that. Just understand that that's the system. It works that way. It's just business in America, or maybe business everywhere. Along with your lawyer, you should have an accountant. I also have something on here. You should also have a therapist, but that's optional. Although, frankly, everyone benefits from therapy, if you want my opinion. You want an accountant? the less time you spend thinking about money and someone else spends thinking about it for you, the happier you're going to be as a freelance developer. You don't want to pay, if you start having some success, you want to talk to a financial advisor too. They're out there, go to a bank, go to some sort of credit institution or financial institution, and schedule an hour to talk to somebody and say, okay, I'm making some money at this, I'm having a little bit of success, where should I be putting my money? Should I be putting it into this? Because there's no 401k plan for you by default like you might get at a full-time employer. So you need to be thinking about where your money can go and not just how you're going to buy pizza this week or how you're going to make rent this week. You need to be thinking about how I'm going to retire someday. These are important things, and you should talk to a professional about it. You don't have to spend your whole life talking to accountants. The less you talk to accountants, the happier you're going to be. But schedule an hour to talk to one, see what's involved. Make sure someone else is filing your taxes because it's miserable, and they'll go through it very quickly. You just hand them a box of receipts and call it a day. Along those lines, in terms of taxes, by default, you're what's called a sole proprietorship. Because there's three things you can be. You can be a sole proprietorship, you can be a limited liability company, an LLC, if you will, or you can be a corporation. By default, you're a sole proprietorship. Then what you have to do to become a sole proprietorship is just stand up and go, I am a sole proprietorship. That's it. There's no paperwork. You don't do anything. You just start doing your work. You start collecting money. That's all there is to it. I would say this is not necessarily a good thing for you to be by default. What you probably want to do is spend a little time filling out the paperwork and become a limited liability company, an LLC, which basically says that you're doing more or less the same thing, but if someone sues you, they can't go after your personal assets. They can only go after company assets. Corporations also give you that, but there's an enormous amount of paperwork in corporations. And you have to have a shareholder meeting where it's just you bringing donuts for you to eat. You don't... corporations for individuals are probably overkill. You can do it. It brings a lot of paperwork. It brings a lot of regulations. It's just not worth it. Most people probably want to aim for an LLC. And you can do this very quickly. You can go to, I guess you probably can go to like LegalZoom.com or something. You fill out the paperwork and it's not hard. You can get set up like that very quickly. You do want some protection though in case someone decides to sue you. Never let someone not pay you. I already said that. I'm going to skip that. But seriously, never let anyone not pay you. It's very easy for people to quietly not pay you, and you need to stay on top of them for that. A lot of people as freelancers think that they don't have any rights. They think that they, are working by the grace of God, and that's not a healthy way to think about it. You want to think of yourself as a professional with a service that people require, and if they're not going to pay you, you're wasting your time with these people because there's other people that will pay you. And it comes down again to self-esteem, and you absolutely need to make sure that you can think highly enough of yourself. If you don't think highly enough of yourself, you shouldn't be doing this. Never work on a verbal contract. People make this mistake all the time. And this includes working for your friends and family, which, by the way, I should have written as a bullet point here. Never work for your friends and family. But seriously, never do it. It's miserable. Because they're kind of like this guy, but less professional. They probably dress better, though. If you work on a verbal contract, and people will do this to you as companies, and they do it perfectly innocently. They'll be like, hey, can you get started on this project? So we need it right now. We need it as fast as you can do it. And we're going to get legal involved on Monday, and they'll take care of the paperwork. Well, then we'll start working on Monday as soon as their signature's on there. If you work on a verbal contract and you don't get paid, you have no one to blame but yourself. Don't ever work on a verbal contract. Until you have your signature on something, you have their signature on something, no work gets done. And anyone that won't play ball under those terms, you should never work with. You should walk out the door immediately because they're not going to pay you. They're basically telling you right from the start, they're not going to pay you. Don't work with these people. You don't have to have anything big and complicated and binding. You don't have to sign anything in blood or contribute your firstborn or anything like that. But you should always make sure there's paperwork in place. If you're a freelance, before very long, you're going to have a very standard template for contracting work and non-disclosure agreements. You don't have to go to a lawyer to write something up every time. Chances are you're going to cut and paste some names and addresses into it and sign the same paper over and over again with different people. You don't have to think a great deal about this once you have it in place. In fact, there's templates on the internet if you trust them. Pay a lawyer an hour for his time and do it the right way if you feel better about that. But always, always, always have paper in place. Get health insurance. If you work for a full-time employer, you might have benefits, you might have health insurance. If you work for yourself, the only health insurance you have is the stuff you pay for yourself. You always, always, always want to have it, even if it's the bare minimum that you can have. Even if you're incredibly healthy, you never know when you're going to be in the emergency room, and one trip to the emergency room can bankrupt you. So you can go into an emergency room because of any number of things. The doctor can look at you and not touch you and charge you $1,000. And then you go, okay, I paid that $1,000, and 2 weeks later a $300 bill shows up, and you don't know what that's for, and this will happen over and over again. You want the insurance company to take care of that. You want to make sure that you pay them a little bit of money so that if there's a lot of money to be paid, somebody else pays it, and you don't have to deal with that over and over again. It's really very scary. If you don't have a job, you should get health insurance for yourself anyway, whether you're a freelancer or you're just unemployed. Maybe someday we'll have a public option like the rest of the first world, but right now, you absolutely need to be paying for this. Let's see. Get a nice chair and monitor. This is very important. If you're going to sit somewhere for 15 hours a day, you want the nicest ass platform you can get. Go out, and this is... I'm sorry, what? I heard someone say something. If you are going to work at the same desk all day, go out and get the Aeron chair. It's an expensive chair, and your butt will never feel better. The chair never wears out. I've had one since 2001, and it's the exact same chair. It looks brand new. I sit in it all the time, constantly for over a decade. It's good for your back. It's got lumbar support. You don't have to get an Aeron. You can get whatever you want. This is just the example because it's the chair I have. But you don't want. How do you spell it? A-E-R-O-N. Aeron. Herman Miller is the company that makes them. You can find them used on eBay, and even used, they probably look brand new because the things are basically indestructible. As an awful side note, also the seat is mesh, so if you fart, it doesn't linger. Also, another benefit of working from home. What was I going to say? I don't know. You want to take care of your back and your butt, and you want to take care of your eyes. So you want to go out and get the most expensive monitor you can. These are the two things you spend a lot of money on up front. Go out and get the Apple Cinema display or the Dell 30-inch monitor or whatever. And the prices on these have come down recently. They used to be like you're paying $3,000 for a monitor. Now you're paying, depending on what you want, a couple hundred to to $1,000, somewhere in that range. And it's a big amount of money to put out initially, especially if you're just starting out, but it's worth doing, especially if you're going to spend that much time doing it, because if you're working on like a crappy old CRT monitor, God forbid, or something like that, eventually you start to feel that. You start to get eye strain, and you find that you can't work well in any conditions. You want to take care of yourself over time. You want to watch out for things like repetitive stress injury and stuff like that. That's true in any job, but definitely true here because nobody's watching out for you but you. But that being said, you don't need to have this lavish .com lifestyle we all remember from the late 90s. Or if you don't remember it, then you don't want it. Just take my word for it. You don't want to spend $10,000 on a table that's encrusted with diamonds that you bought wholesale from Kanye West's house or something like that. You want to have a folding table that you bought from Office Depot for $10 and a $2,000 chair. That's basically the method we're looking for here. You want to take care of yourself. You're not looking for a lavish lifestyle. You just want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's very important. Get an office. And I have office in air quotes here. What you want to do more than anything is, if you can work from home, that's great. But even if you work from home, you need to get out of the house because you're going to get cabin fever, you're going to drive yourself nuts. What you want to do is this. You want to have an office. And when I say an office, you never want to rent office space. Your office is now called Starbucks. Go to a coffee shop or a bagel shop or something like that has Wi-Fi, and they don't really care if you sit there. My personal scam is there's on the East Coast, there's a bagel company called Bruegger's. There's a couple of them in Charlotte even. They will sell you what they call a bottomless coffee mug for $150. You can drink as much coffee as you want for free there. Well, for free after $150. But I consider that my rent on an office space for a year is $150. So you find places, especially coffee shops and bagel shops, they're generally empty during working hours because everyone else is at an office being miserable and wearing pants. You can go to this place. You won't be bothered for the most part. You'll have free internet access because they all have Wi-Fi now. You'll have all the coffee you can drink. And you get out of the house. It gives you a chance to get to a different perspective and a different environment so that you can get some fresh air every now and then and some bad coffee. But there are companies right now that never actually ever had an office space. You see this a lot in startups now because of what the economy is. And I think there's a project called Delicious Library, if you're a Mac user. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. They built that entire thing at a local coffee shop in San Francisco, I think it was, where it was just two guys with laptops sitting around a table and, buying coffee. And since they were in there buying coffee, no one cared if they stayed there all day. And they wrote $1 million selling product at a coffee shop, and they never paid rent on an office, and neither should you. Okay, so I'm wrapping this up here. I have 2 more notes for you. Stick it out is this note. If you find it's not working, because it's never working when you first start, if you find it's not working, you have to stick it out. You can't give up too soon, because hard work and perseverance will eventually turn things around in most cases. So you should just do your best to not give up and keep trying. That being said, if you try long enough and it's not working, you should be smart enough to know when it's time to bounce out of there and go get a real job. If you've been working at it for 12 months and it's not working out and you've exhausted your savings and you're running up your credit cards and there's no work on the horizon, it's time to go back to the workforce and say, this didn't work now, maybe I'll try it later. But you do not want to get into a situation where you've run up all your credit cards, you have no credit, no liquidity, no money in your bank account, no parents you can steal money from their purse from. You don't want to get into that situation because you're chasing an impossible dream. Now there's other options. You can modify your impossible dream to be less impossible. You can, find other clients. You can take a different tack. That's part of sticking it out. But eventually you want to also make sure that if you can't stick it out, you want to make sure that you don't ruin yourself. And again, that comes back to whether you want to have a boring job or a normal job. At that point, you should be looking for an interesting job and not, yes?
Would it be a good idea to have, to start off freelancing as something on the side?
He asked, would it be a good idea to start freelancing on the side? That depends on your employer. It depends on what you're doing. The problem with this talk is that everybody's unique and every situation is unique. I would say yes, it's a good idea if you can pull it off. And again, you also have to balance things like, does my wife want me to come home for dinner? And stuff like that. Or, do the kids want me to play with them when I need to be upstairs working because this is my second full-time job? If you can pull it off, or you can start small, you get a small contract doing something you love, definitely do that. Because there's no sense in giving up the safety net if you don't have to. In fact, if your company's okay with it and you never have to give up your full-time job and you like it and you can make money on the side, there's no reason you have to be full-time at this either. You can do what you like. I got one more point that I'm going to take questions, which is what I was just talking about here. My last point, I just wrote down balance, exclamation point. Work, play, sleep, and love. Do not find yourself doing any of these things too much. You want to find that you go to work, whatever your work may be, and then you come home and you have some fun. Or, you want to find that you get enough hours of sleep at night that you're not waking up in the morning and going, why am I doing this? And, in a former life, I was trained to be a high school English teacher many, many years ago. And there are some mornings where I look at myself in the mirror. There's some nights I don't get up in the morning if I don't have to. There's some days where I get up and I look in the mirror and I go, why am I not teaching English? Why am I doing this instead? Because all my customers are jerks and, the money's not coming in. And then, if you find, there will be days like that. There's always going to be days like that. You might find next month you're making tons of money and that you've got a new batch of customers and they're much more fun and the work is interesting and you're solving problems that no one else is solving and you're the hero every day. And those are good feelings. You want those feelings. But if every day you're waking up and you're going, I just don't like this, you got to get out of it, But don't work too much. Don't play too much. It's very easy to turn on the television and start watching, I don't know, Oprah in the middle of the day. And then, by the time Judge Judy's over, you're like, oh, I should have been working for the last 3 hours. You don't want to get stuck trying to beat that last level on, I don't know, the Nintendo Wii game you're playing instead of working. You want to make sure you sleep enough. If you don't sleep enough, you're going to be miserable. And you don't want to, and I wrote down love is this last thing, you don't want to ruin your relationships. You want to try and find the balance between those 4 things. Work, play, sleep, and love. If you find that balance, you're going to be successful no matter what you do. All right, so that's my talk. I got a couple minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions? I saw hands go up earlier. I don't know. Did I scare anyone off? Anyone?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Kickstarter, is this a website where you can put an idea and get small contributors?
Yes. Is it a good, are you asking?
I'm asking if you've ever worked with that or do you have any ideas?
He asked what I think about Kickstarter, which is a website for, you say, I want money, people give you donations, you tell them what this project you're going to build. And there's been some very successful ones. In terms of video games, Double Fine, which is the company that did Psychonauts, which you can buy, by the way, at humblebundle.com this week if you haven't gotten your copy of that yet for Linux and Mac OS. They went on there and said, we want to build a new game. We have this great pedigree of game developers and some of the greatest minds in adventure games. We want to build this game. It's going to cost us, I don't forget what their original number was. It was like $1 million. And by the time that this period where people could contribute to their Kickstarter project ended, they had $3.5 million sitting there. Jason Scott, who does textfiles.com, did the BBS documentary, did the documentary on Infocom, the Get Lamp documentary. The guy who saved GeoCities when Yahoo was going to pull the plug on it. That guy said, I want to work for 6 months, and I need this much money to do it. These are the projects I will complete in that time. And he got the money. I don't think it's going to work for everyone. If what you're saying is, I want to be a freelance developer, and I'm going to go do some cool open source stuff and generically, and until I get off the ground, I would like Kickstarter to finance it. I think it's actually against the rules. They won't let you run that Kickstarter. That being said, if you want to run one, say, I'm going to build this specific project, and it will take this much time and this much money, that's exactly what Kickstarter is for. And it's a great way to get started, too. The danger is that that's no different than anything else. That's hustling and marketing. If you don't have, I'm thinking, who here in the 80s played a video game called Space Quest? I wish more hands went up. That game is awesome. I love it. I loved it. There was a whole series. The two guys that did that are Mark Crow. I forget their names. They're on Kickstarter right now. They have 2 more days left on their Kickstarter for $500,000. They want to make another Space Quest-like game for nostalgia, and they haven't hit that goal yet. They haven't hit the $500,000 point yet. They're like $75,000 away from it, and they're going to run out of time and not get the money. And theoretically, there should be a fan base for that. Leisure Suit Larry, who played that? He wanted money to do a remake. He got the money. So it's all about marketing. And if you don't have a fan base, you may not be able to make Kickstarter work for you. I can't think of a random guy that just got the money. They always had name recognition, or they always had nostalgia or rabid fans of some sort. And there's been wild success stories on there, but it would be a hard sell for someone starting out, is what I'm saying. Yes?
It sounds like there's a little bit of a difference between you're freelancing because you're working for somebody else doing their project, or you're freelancing because you want to work on your own project and you want to be your own boss.
Well, yes, that's true. He said that there seems to be a difference between freelancing because you're building stuff for other people and freelancing because you're building your own stuff. You want to be your own boss. That's absolutely true. And there's a danger in that. There are people who have had success stories both ways. The problem is that if you're building your own thing, then you have to sell it afterwards, which is always awful. But people have definitely done it. It's not what my path has been, but it's certainly a path that people have done. It's just another form of the same thing. This shouldn't really say how to quit your job. This should say how to fire your boss, and that would be another thing there. That being said, in my line of work, what I've loved best about it is that people pay me to do stuff which may or may not be closed source, but in building those things, I often have to build tools which I then open source. I say, I needed this to get my job done. I hope it benefits the rest of the internet. And I have a whole Mercurial server full of source code now that has helped me and hopefully helped other people too. Any other questions? Yes?
Some people have made a big deal about the difference between calling yourself a freelance or a contractor or a consultant. Do you have any thoughts on that?
The difference between being a contractor or a freelancer consultant, I think it's probably a pay scale. I don't know. It depends on the market too. Like some people hear freelance and they think dirty hippie, and you want to watch out for that. That's definitely not the attitude that you want to give, even if you are a dirty hippie. So that's fine. Generally, consultants, if you can find someone that's looking for a consultant, what they're saying is we're going to pay you more for the same job. I don't usually get those jobs, so I hadn't even thought about that until you brought it up. That's actually a really good point. Are there any other? I'm going to put this up here real quick. I'll take any other questions you guys have. So this is questions and answers. If you're looking to hire someone, I just happen to be a freelance developer. I don't know. So if you want to get in touch with me, my resume is there. Like I said, you should have a link that's very simple, iculus.org/resume. You can see all the things I've worked on. If you want to email me, that's my email address, iculus@iculus.org. I'm on Twitter as Iculus, and Google+. You can find me there. I'm on Facebook, but if you're using Facebook, you can go screw yourself. So, okay, so any other questions? I have like 2 or 3 minutes left. Did anyone else have any other questions they want to ask? Anything? Yes? Scarier things? I don't know. This whole speech was a whole list of horror stories. I don't know. The things you want to look out for is people that will screw you, because not everyone works on good faith, and you want to try to avoid being in the hospital ever. Jokes aside, you'd never want to go to the emergency room if you don't have to. Like I said, have health insurance. And the type of health insurance you get, by the way, should depend on how healthy you are. Like if you're generally healthy, get some baseline health insurance, just enough that you're not going to be screwed if you end up in the hospital. If you have like really bad asthma or something, you might want something a little better, you know. There's lots and lots of options out there. You should talk to someone. There's people that don't work specifically for insurance companies, but can recommend, oh, you should have Blue Cross Blue Shield, or you should have this from Humana or whatever. Talk to a professional about it. Don't talk to a sales representative from that agency, and find the package that works best for you. The scariest things for me, because I usually work in other people's code bases, and you might too, also as a freelancer, the scariest thing is thinking you know what's going on and then finding something horrible, because you might find, after carefully evaluating a whole code base, that there's one line of C code in the middle of it that says, call this Win32 function that does the entire program, and you're now writing the Win32 API instead of porting something to Linux. In my case, you know, there's a lot of unknowns, especially when you're working in someone else's code base, that you don't know what obstacles you're going to fall over until you literally trip over them, and that's the scary thing for me, at least. I don't know. Yes. I'm sorry. What'd you say? I do not. He asked if I carry errors and omission insurance. I don't know much about that. Maybe I should. I don't know. I have health insurance. That's about all I have. Most people don't carry general liability insurance. You can if you want to. It depends on the contracts you're getting. If you start getting to things that are like big name, high money stuff, where like if you fail, there's going to be a lot of problems, or people are going to die or something like that, you definitely want to get better insurance than this. But you know, you don't want to spend your entire paycheck on insurance. So, yes. You should. I don't. I'm very, very disorganized. It's one of the benefits of being a freelance. I've experimented with different things. Google Calendar's been what's worked best for me in terms of keeping track of where I've been spending my time, what alerts that things are coming up to be due. I also keep a Bugzilla for myself that's just on my LAN that I don't keep bugs in. I just keep like things that are still pending, so I can start checking them off as assigned or resolved as they've already been done. It's a matter of how much discipline you want to have. Needing less discipline is always better, but there's lots of different tools out there. I found the things that I don't have to pay attention to a lot are the things I like best. Question?
Yeah, this is not
They're all important questions. Go ahead. Yes.
Have you ever submitted anything to the daily WTF?
No. That's actually a good point, though. He asked if I've ever found something so ridiculous that you submit it to the daily WTF. I'm going to recommend that you send these things in IM conversations to your friends, but you don't ever talk about them publicly. It's really, really bad business. Like, there have been so many times where I've found the most ridiculous bug ever, and I wanted to tweet about it, but my employers, the people I work for, read my Twitter stream, and they're going to be mad. So don't chuckle about it to yourself, and you will find the most ridiculous code in any project you work on, but don't kiss and tell. That's all I'm saying. Yes?
One more question.
We have one more question, but I'm going to ignore this guy. Keep asking. No, go ahead, quickly. I'll answer quickly.
I just want to make a quick point. No matter what you do, even if you're interviewing for a regular salary job, never, ever, ever say anything bad about anyone you've ever worked with.
That's true. Well, if I can summarize, they said don't say anything bad in interviews about other companies you work for. Be professional at all times. I know that's a really simple way to put it, but it's harder to do than you think. There's a certain amount of maturity you need to build as time goes on. Do it as quickly as you can. Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
When we created Asterisk over a decade ago, we could not have imagined that Asterisk would not only become the most widely adopted open source communication software on the planet, but that it would impact the entire industry in the way that it has. Today, Asterisk has found its way into more than 170 countries and virtually every Fortune 1000 company.
The success of Asterisk has enabled a transition of power from the hands of the traditional proprietary phone vendors into the hands of the users and the administrators of phone systems. Using this power, our customers have created all sorts of business-changing applications, from small office phone systems to mission-critical call centers to international carrier networks. In fact, there's even an entire country whose communications infrastructure runs on Asterisk.
Digium has always been about creating technology that expands communications capabilities in ways that we could never have imagined. And that's part of what's game-changing about Digium. Today, we're doing it again, this time by introducing a new family of HDIP phones that extends control of the user all the way to the desktop.
The launch of these new products represents the next phase in Digium's history of innovation. These are the first and only IP phones designed to fully leverage the power of Asterisk. When we first discussed our expectations for building a family of phones for use with Asterisk, our requirements were pretty simple. We asked the team to build the phones such that they were easy to install, integrate, provision, and use. I think you'll soon agree our engineers have delivered on that goal. User feedback is validating that when it comes to operation with Asterisk-based systems, including our own SwitchVox-based product, these are the easiest to use, best integrated, most interoperable products on the market today. The Digium family of phones will initially include 3 IP desk phones, uniquely designed to complement any Asterisk or SwitchVox-based solution. These phones are different for a number of reasons. First, they're exclusively designed for use with Asterisk. Secondly, we've made it really easy to auto-discover and provision the phones. Next, we've made it easy for the phones to access information inside of Asterisk, allowing tight coupling between an application and the phone. Additionally, we've created an applications engine that allows users and developers to create and run their own apps on the phone. And finally, we've done all of this at a very compelling price point. At Digium, we're always thinking of ways to give our customers the best value in business phone systems and also give them the power to create their own solutions for any communications challenge.
We'll continue to push the boundaries, not only to make Asterisk cooler, faster, and more technologically feature-rich, but to make Asterisk and VoIP communications even easier.
And together, we'll change the way the world communicates.
Again.
Cloud stacks are everywhere.
This is the way to better utilize all your resources, and it makes managing all your resources pretty easy.
All of the innovation is happening in open source. The collaborative nature and of the community and the speed at which these deficiencies, these bugs are getting discovered and then fixed is a thing that really shows the power of the open source community.
It is global, and it's definitely because of the users.
Community people are extremely friendly and always ready to help.
If you go onto IRC any day, you'll see these guys helping each other out, and they're all doing it like in a selfless manner.
The product is transparent for everyone. Everyone can look at the code base. Everyone can see how CloudStack is being built. Nothing is proprietary. Everything is open.
In many ways, it's absolutely vital to the ongoing health of CloudStack.
The most exciting event in recent memory for me was our first developer boot camp. And our call gave people, I think, maybe 2 weeks notice to come attend. I was expecting 25 or 30 people. So we ended up with 87 people and had to go get more chairs into the room twice.
Everything within cloud computing is commodity and is open source. And so I don't think that you'll see anywhere where open source is not pervasive in cloud computing. And so I think it's an assumption. I think when you talk about cloud computing, you're really talking about open source cloud computing.
CloudStack is a robust solution for large deployments.
You have dozens of data centers and thousands of servers in each data center. Hardware is going to fail, and CloudStack is designed to handle, number one, that mass scale. Number two, it's designed to handle the failure that inevitably happens in large deployments.
We started working on CloudStack over 4 years ago, and it was the original set of people working on it had a background of delivering software to telcos and service providers.
Lots of QA, lots of users actually using it.
High availability is a key feature. Multiple hypervisor support, different network models. You can pick up whatever suits you better.
Cloud Stack Management Server can be deployed in different physical machines.
It definitely has a huge footprint. It's being deployed everywhere.
There's a major movie studio that they were using Cloud Stack. They were using it to transcode video, and I thought that was terribly fascinating. What I found more fascinating is what they did during lunch, where they would spin up 50 or 60 game servers. Then as soon as lunch was over, they would destroy all the instances and go back to doing real work.
Cloud Stack is vast. It touches so many different aspects, and there's no one person that's kind of like a master of all those realms.
I think Cloud Stack as a project is going to be one of the leaders, simply because it's some of the most featureful and robust platforms out there.
I don't see any limits to the Cloud Stack.